What's up, everybody? Tanner Larsson here, and welcome back to the Optimized Ecommerce Podcast. Super excited to have you here. We are joined today by a repeat guest, Rosemary Kwoka. She is actually related to another one of our optimization team members, Eric Kwoka, but they're not married. They're actually just related by marriage. It's like a cousin kind of thing in there, right? Your husband is his cousin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So when you hear Eric Kwoka and you hear Rosemary, they're not the same. They're not married, but they are related, right? So very cool. We've got, a family kind of group building out inside the Ecom Insider world and the Build, Grow, Scale world. But the cool thing about what Rosemary is going to be talking about today, I was really excited to have her back on because Rosemary is a revenue optimization expert, like many of our other team members that you guys have heard from. So she works on our amplified partner stores, and she also has transitioned into teaching her knowledge to some of our Ecom Insider members, as well as our EBB members and things like that. But she also has moved around and kind of helped fill gaps in our amplified partner program, where we're trying to figure out how we can provide better services, improve our performance, and just get bigger and better wins for our clients. And the current piece that she is working on is very, very powerful. Now, we've talked about user testing in the past, but she's going to talk about it from a new angle and a new kind of what we've learned approach to it. And user testing, it sounds boring, but it's super cool when you actually get into it. And Rosemary is actually running a team inside of BGS that is managing not only user testing, but also Lucky Orange and heat recording, session recording, all of that stuff, and putting those together into a system that allows her team to go around to all of our amplified stores and plug in with what's going on and provide massive information and wins from data that allows the RO to make bigger wins and improvements and optimizations on the store. It's kind of a long-winded way of explaining it, but basically she adds gasoline to the fire of what our ROs are already doing. And it's through this user testing and Lucky Orange process. And she's running the team. She's actually developing the program for how it's going to work and how the deliverables and everything. So when it comes to talking user testing, right now, there's really no one better who you could possibly learn from than what Rosemary is going to share with you. So Rosemary, super glad to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
And, she came back. We had a really good episode last time talking about, leadership and stuff like that. So if you haven't heard that episode, it was a lot of fun. Make sure you go back and listen to it. But Rosemary, why don't we just kind of dive right into the power of user testing? But to set the stage for that, how about in like a layman's terms, what is user testing? So someone who doesn't know could catch up.
Yeah. So user testing essentially is a tool that you can use to identify any bottlenecks on your site. It's just kind of testing how well users react, navigate, use your website. And it's just essentially where you get to watch in real time how people are using your website. You can hear their insights, you can hear their emotions, and you can direct them in a way that is according to a buyer's journey or according to questions that you might have that could be an issue for your conversion. Essentially, if your site's too complicated to use, no one's going to buy from your site. If they can't find a product they want, no one's going to buy from your site. So user testing is something that we use to just look and see at the site just to make sure it's users can use it, it's clear, and navigation is hitting well. And we get even more insights when we incorporate Lucky Orange recordings to prove those points as well.
So if I'm just to paint the picture, when we say it, that's the technical side. The user testing would be basically using a service where you'd basically pay to have someone within your target demographic for your store. You'd give them a task like go find a product, add it to cart, and or go to this specific product and do this. But then very basic instructions. They go do it, but they record their screen while doing it, and they narrate what they're thinking as they go through the process. So you get a copy of that recording, and then you can analyze what happens on there, right?
Yeah, and it kind of puts your website to the test of, is this website designed for me or is it designed for my
Yes.
users?
Yeah. Yeah. We always find stuff in the user testing when it's like, because you tell them to do something and it's very generic, like, hey, find your favorite product out of this category and go to the check and take it to the checkout. And then as they're doing it, they're saying, like, they come up with things that you're like, man, I didn't even know someone would use the site this way. And then you find a roadblock or a speed bump that gets in the way, and then you can go in there. And that's the whole thing. We're trying to eliminate those roadblocks, and we go streamline that, smooth it out, gives us things to test. And then additionally, when we have a new optimization, or like we want to launch a wizard or something like that, we can drop, the user testing onto that and say, hey, test this specific function and see does it work the way we think it does.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Because we think that something could be just so clear and straight to the point, and it feels like you're putting all of these red boxes around, this specific most important information, and your users are missing it. There's a reason why,
Yep.
and you get to test that and see that the users will either you can observe them just completely ignore it, and with the completely ignoring of that whatever element it is, they might pick up on something else, and maybe you'll need to move it there, and then it's just a constant testing.
Yep. And I know Casey, one of our other ROs, it's one of his, user testing is probably his absolute favorite thing in the world to do, because he finds so much stuff, even on stores that are already incredibly highly optimized. So you can still find wins. And then when stores are really not optimized, you just find mountains of gold. So, okay, we got the basics down. We know what that is, but how is it critical? Because like we know it's important, but like someone's like, oh, I have a low traffic store, or someone says I have a high traffic store. Like, how does that apply to them? Is it that important for both, or less for one, more for the other?
It is definitely important for both high and low traffic stores. We'll start with low traffic stores. It's a great tool to use because you don't have to wait for a test to reach significance. You don't need 3,000 sessions on your site to see if something's functioning and winning on conversion. You just need at the most 10 users, depending if you're more mobile heavy or desktop, or 5 mobile testers and 5 desktop testers. You can see what is blocking your users from proceeding to the next journey on their buying journey. So for low traffic stores, it is, I would say, the best way to improve your conversion rates. I've had so much success in user testing on some of our lower traffic stores, and that's, our store would bring in the best copywriters and have the best graphics, and they're like, I don't understand, we're having an issue with trust, or I don't really understand what's going on. This is like top of the line copy. And then we put it out on the site and we watch these users interact with it. And it turns out that the copy that we're using is for the medical field, and it's for a specific, more educated than Homer Simpson type of copy, and our users just kind of glance over it, and it, we had to test out and see if what we're having is clear or not. And that was such a huge win. I think we had like over a 40% win on increasing conversions, just by doing a generic user test with the copy. And that was a huge issue, was the clarity of what was on our site.
So in that case, specifically, the copy was written over their heads, basically. It was great copy, but it wasn't speaking to the actual target demographic the way that they thought it was.
Yeah, it sounded great for what I would consider if you knew medical terms, or if you knew, if you were specific in I don't know, if you're highly educated and you knew a lot of big words.
Yeah. Okay. Which, and as we know, like there's that show, are you smarter than or who's smarter than a fifth grader or whatever that is. And you realize how much the adult population struggles sometimes. So and you mentioned Homer Simpson. That's why we always talk about, keeping everything at a Homer Simpson level. So no matter who you are, you can understand it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And, Casey, again, someone that I talk to a lot about with user testing, he kind of used this analogy of like you have a bucket of water and you see that there's water in the bucket, but it's draining out, and it's because you can see the holes in your bucket, and the water is draining because of these holes. Well, when you look at your website and you're like, I've got perfect copy, I've got all of these things, and you're looking at it and you don't know why your website is draining or why your website is not converting, you have to test to see what blind spots you have or what bottlenecks you have or what problems you have on your site that's preventing conversion on your site. And just kind of that analogy to me is just so perfect, because like you just have all of these elements and you spend so much time from product page to graphics and content and all this on your website, and it just seems so perfect, but there's holes everywhere, and user testing certainly exposes that and gives you unbiased opinion and using on the site.
So obviously, for, like you said, for low traffic sites, it's almost like a sub. It's not a true substitute, but it's a nice little stopgap for not being able to run split tests because of statistical significance. You don't have enough traffic for that, so you can run user tests and get wins using it that way. And what about on the high traffic stores? I mean, obviously they'll benefit because they're high traffic, but how do they benefit, so quickly and heavily?
Yeah. So with high traffic stores, you can use it in conjunction with an A/B test. So what we've done in the past is, have our website layout, test the general site with it, and then see what the issues are on the site and possible issues. And then we create an A/B test on, what if, I'll just go back to like a trust issue or a navigation issue. If we run, a specific set of filters on a site and we see how that helps with conversion, then, we can use the A/B test, see what the win is there, and then you run a user test just to see how that new implementation is working. And you just get more and more proof of what is winning. And then you also then get to retest it again to make sure that it is functioning as you wish and hoped it would be. So in addition, it's a great complement to A/B testing, as well as it just pinpoints any anxieties that the site might have, that you might not notice because traffic is so high. You could absolutely see what that 2% of people that aren't, checking out, you get to see what that is.
Yep. And, another piece of that is that the A/B testing is great and it's data. It's just a number, right? But whereas the user testing, you're getting the experience of the person that relates to what that number is telling you, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's super cool because when you look at the number, you're like, man, I just don't know what that is. And then you watch the user testing or you watch their session recordings and stuff like that. And it's so eye-opening where you're like, man, how come we never saw that before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And that's another great thing with user testing is that you see what I call user bugs, something that isn't exactly code that's broken on the site, but just isn't, consistent on the site. So if if a user adds something to checkout and they wanted to go back and continue shopping, and every single time they click continue shopping, it leads to a different direction of the page. I've seen some frustrations with that with our users, just saying like, oh no, I wanted to go back to the home page, or, and you see them kind of like try and figure out what's going on. Obviously, if this is a lower traffic store, those user bugs that I say are going to have a higher impact than a high traffic store. But even with a high traffic store, those are the little wins that you need to continue your increase in conversion.
Yep. And user bugs, guys, like when Rosemary says this, like she's not talking about your typical, like something's not working. She's because like we have a full-time bug checking team that goes through all of our partner stores over and over and over again. And every time a new optimization goes, the bug checking team goes. So like there's constantly being combed for bugs. She's talking about how customers will find basically the darndest way of doing something on a site that you could never have anticipated. And then it doesn't work the way that they expect it to. And then you start seeing multiple people doing it. Those are user bugs that come up because they expect it to work a certain way or do a certain thing that your entire team and however many years you've been doing it have never, ever even thought of. And then you have to address those. And those can be some really cool little wins that come out from that.
Yeah, and it's constantly changing because the way people perceive, certain words or just the way that they perceive things on the website, it does change with time. So if someone's looking at a button that I don't know, like if someone's looking at a button that says, for gifts, like click here or whatever, they might have this other expectation of what type of gift is in a gift. And I don't know, I have noticed that one word might work for a wave of users, and then all of a sudden that word is like garbage, like what they don't understand what a call to action is because it just doesn't fit along with that. And that's why we test about every 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks on our stores, just to make sure that we're having a solid update with the change of times.
Makes sense. Now, you mentioned a split testing, the A/B testing. So how is split testing, A/B testing, to clarify for people, well, how is that different from the user testing? I know we kind of touched on it, but I just want you to very clearly define them.
So A/B testing is made of real users who have no idea they're being tested. And we have thousands of sessions or hundreds, thousands of sessions of users, organically kind of going through their site, and we don't hear what they have to say. We don't know what they're actually looking at. We just see their clicking journey. User testing is made up of recruited users that we pay, and they're given a certain amount of tasks, between 5 and 6 tasks. And they're also, we can organize our recruiters or kind of separate them by income level, marital status, anything that fits with our site's demographics. We can filter those recruited users and give them a frame of mind. So when they start the user test, they understand that, they are looking for clothing for their mom, and they stumbled upon a Google ad, and they landed on this site. And so they understand where they're coming from. They understand they're researching, because that's what we see for our store, is that most of our traffic comes from Google Ads. So they understand the process of how they landed to it. And then once they land on the site, they can verbally say things. Now, I don't recommend listening to their opinions because whether or not they don't like the color blue versus the color gray, it's not really relevant to what we're testing, but we can be specific in the directions that we give them. So you land on this page, browse the page, and find a colored shirt that is purple, size extra large. And so they have this set of tasks they need to do, and now we watch their way of how they navigate to that. So do they use the search bar? Do they go to bestsellers and then filter their results? Is that the first thing that is on the site that you want everyone to see? Are you describing that product? So you get to see what the intent is of that, and then make those observations from there. So that's like a huge difference between A/B testing and user testing, is that you're fully immersed with that recruited user in this user testing process where in A/B testing, you could have someone who just stumbled upon the site, someone who, maybe doesn't fit the demographic, or someone who does, and, they're just kind of browsing and all that. So that's a huge difference, as well as A/B test is from a statistical standpoint, and user testing is kind of from a, like emotional / communication.
Experiential type thing.
Yeah, experiential type of experience. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay. Now, just guys, so if you're listening to this and she's talking about like having these user tests done and everything, and you're paying these people to do this, so there's a slight bias there, of course, but the cool thing is with the user testing platforms that you can use out there, like if someone gives you a bad user test, you don't have to pay for it. They'll go get you another one, right?
Yep.
And it's also not expensive. We're talking about, between $30 and $50 for user test. The average is about a $40 user test. Sometimes it depends on the platform as well, but and you don't need a ton of them, like Rosemary was talking about, at the max 10. Now that's depends on what you're testing, of course. Now you could, if you're testing a whole bunch of things, then maybe you're going to do a bunch more. But if you did a few, every quarter, you would be in a good spot. Or every time you have a big update or you notice a big problem that you can't identify, spending a couple $100 on user testing will really help you plug those gaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially if you're seeing your GA stats go down and you're like, I just don't understand what's going on. You could even do, I would recommend no less than 3 user tests, and then no more than 10 on the same kind of journey. Because after 10, you'll start seeing the same type of reactions, and you want to get more than 3. So we usually hit between 5 and 8, depending on the usage of the site. So if it's a 90% mobile site, we'll do 8 user tests within that. And that usually gives us so much insight. And in addition to that, we have our Lucky Orange team reviewing that, improving, the errors and that we found on the user test.
Yep. And then we, on all the session recording that Lucky Orange is giving us as well. So we've got a massive amount of data to go through, and you can take the session recordings and what you found in the user testing, see if that's happening on your users as well, or see something in the session recordings and then see if it's going to the user testing. So they all work really, really well together. So, you talked a little bit about this, but like, what are some of the results that, you can get from user testing? But because again, it's still boring to most people until they see like, oh, guess what? Like, it'll make me money. It'll make my store do better. Like there's some tangible improvements, guys, that you're going to get out of this.
Yeah. So in my experience, I've seen some massive results with user testing. A 40% plus increase in conversions with some tests. I know Casey has seen incredible amounts of increase in conversions just off of doing regular user testing. And it's just because you can see those simple changes and not blindly making changes on your site. You are doing it with an intent and a purpose. So we just get, from one user test, you might get 30, I would say maybe about 30, okay, we'll say about 20 to 30 insights, good detailed insights as to what you can do to change or improve your website on. And one of the things that user testing does is you can do a blind test, or we call it an impression test. And this is where the user has never been to your site before. They get shown a picture, or they get access, they see your site for about 15 seconds and they observe it. And then the next question that they get is, what does the site sell as far as you can tell? And that immediately will give you insight as to what most people's impression is on your test, on your site. And for example, you could be selling jewelry, but you might be displaying more of the person and maybe not highlighting the jewelry enough. Some people might just say, oh, this is an apparel store for women, or, oh, this is a health and wellness store. They probably sell candles. So that is like the number one, the first thing that you get is, what do people see as a first impression on our site? And if you get to know right away, do people know that this is a jewelry store, or do they think that it's a candle store initially? And that could also be a make or break on getting traffic to stay on your site. And then another thing is that you don't know what you don't know. So that's another set of insights that you get, is that if you just continuously think that your site is perfectly designed and the aesthetics are great, if you never look into what other people's experiences with your site, you're never going to know how to improve it and how to increase conversions from there. And then, we've just seen a lot of improvement, a lot of proof, and a lot of data to back up, certain changes that we might want to make with the site to see if it'll help with the buying journey.
And, one thing I want, when you don't know what you don't know, one of the things that can ruin the data you get from a user test, and not ruin it, but invalidate, is you as the store owner who doesn't like the fact that someone's calling your baby ugly, right? Because your store is your baby. And, you're emotionally invested. And we see this all the time with store owners that we work with. They're emotionally invested in their store or their product or whatever. And they're resistant to any kind of, optimization. Well, it's like, oh, well, that person's not right. Well, that's the customer, right? Like, they're the one that's, the way you use your store, the way you think it should look, has nothing to do with how it should sell. So you got to remember to keep an open mind and realize that you are not your target audience, and, it's your baby. So of course your baby is beautiful, but if you want your baby to really be a star, you're going to have to allow people to help you improve that baby.
Yeah, never fall in love with the design of your site. It's always, unless you fall in love with the constant change of the user behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there was a trend. It reminds me of the trend of Apple, Samsung. They'd all kind of switched to this very vague, layout where it would just a picture, and then it would say like strong, and then you would turn it on as like sleek, and it's like everyone knows, or what Apple does, what an iPhone does, that's already there, but not everyone's gonna know about this shirt that you have, or the supplement that they have. You can't just have the supplement picture and health next to it. It doesn't really describe anything.
Monkey see, monkey do approach to e-commerce does not work very well, because just because a big site or a big store does it, number one, doesn't mean it's working. And number two, doesn't mean it'll work for you, even if it is working for them. Yeah. Yeah. It's fun to see the different, attachments that we all have to our sites. So, okay, we talked about kind of the cost, we talked about kind of how they work, what you can get out of it, which can be some pretty big wins. I mean, not anyone would take a 40% or 30% win in conversion rate. But obviously there's going to be a good way to run user tests and a bad way. So what are some tips you can give people to get the most out of the user tests that they run? Yeah, absolutely. So we say, for me, 10 user tests max on a specific, if you're doing a general user test or whatever, you want to hit between 5 and 15 user tests. 10's a pretty good spot. If you get anything past 10, you're just getting, you're starting to get into the repetition, and if you go below 5, then you're only really getting the experience of 3 to 4 people. So it's not really enough data to use to make any changes on your site. But again, 5 people minimum per device, 10 max in my opinion. So that's as far as like how many tests is appropriate and okay to observe.
Next would be the tasks. So you don't want to say, go to this site, now tell me how you feel about it. Where there could be some insights from there where you could get, I feel like this site is professional, and you can get some feedback that way, but you want to really optimize the questions that you ask by giving them direct tasks, specific tasks. And when you create your tasks, they have an intention. So if you're doing what I call a general user testing site, and that's just when you are asking a clarity question. So browse this site, what elements on this page, what elements on this page are helpful, and why would you buy from this site as opposed to another site? And so you're asking them questions that are very specific and direct to what you want or are needing to hear. And then, you move on to a specific task. Find a bracelet, rose gold, size, I don't know what size they are, but we'll say it's like size 12. Please go find that. And that might be a bestseller, or it might be, you might be trying to see how easy it is for people to get to a bestseller. You might see how people are navigating and using filters, using parts of your website for navigation. Then we go into a general question, and you're trying to see, how they use their site if they're thinking of someone else. So that would be, it's your friend's birthday. Find something that they would like. And so from here, you're watching them go to bestsellers. You're watching them go to recently added. You're seeing where they're going on the site to get what they think is the best gift on your site. And then you could also see, are they going to those bestsellers, or what are they saying about this process? And then last, you want to see them complete the funnel. So, they're adding items to the cart, they're removing items to the cart all through this journey process. And then you want to see them complete their checkout. So you want to see what they do from finding their friend's gift, adding it to the cart, and entering their information. But they're not actually entering their information. We just give them, a dummy credit card or dummy data that they just enter to see what reactions and observations that we can see as far as completing checkout. Is it too busy in the checkout? Are they seeing upsells, et cetera? Like you just see so much by having them complete the full journey. And you can kind of make some estimates as to what it's like and how our users are feeling, when we're not user testing them, when we're just observing their Lucky Orange recordings, or when we're doing split tests. So that, I think the most important thing would be the tasks, being direct, setting those up appropriately. And then you'll also want to set up your audience according to your demographic. So if you're selling adult diapers, I don't know, your age range that you can have on that, it might not be the 18 to 35. It might be the, we'll say like 45 to 65 plus, whatever that range is for that specific product. So you need to be a little bit more specific as to which users are going to be taking your test. So you want it to get as close to your audience as possible. And you also don't want a 62-year-old who's giving you feedback on, some new, some new niche that you find on TikTok. You don't really want the vice versa either, because they're not going to understand that demographic. And then creating a scenario. So, you're on Facebook and you're looking for a Father's Day gift, and this ad pops up. giving them a situation as to how they landed there is also helpful to get them in the right frame of mind as to why they're there. And you'll hear them say, oh, okay, like, oh, I don't think my dad would like this, or, I'm not really sure. I feel like a dad would appreciate this. Whether or not they have someone to, father to actually buy for, they're still having that mindset as to whether or not a dad would like it. Yeah, and then from there, once you get to the analyzing part, you kind of have to listen to it with an open mind. That's the way that I kind of remind myself, because some users can be too critical. They're commenting on colors and style and all of that. Despite having the preemptive, we're not looking for design critiques or anything like that. We just need you to answer the task questions. So you need to hear the influx of their voice as they're completing their task, and kind of filter out, the side chat on the site. So it's not something that you can watch a user test while you've got several things going on. You really need to pay attention to both what their mouse is doing, but also the feeling that you get based off of their voice inflections. That's what. Yeah. Yeah. And so after you do that, as I analyze the test, I mark down specific pain points. So I'll hit, this is a clarity issue, and I'll mark the time. User was unsure when if you can return this product or not. And then I would, clarity. And then the next one would be navigation. The user, in order to find the bestsellers, our user went from the home page, scrolled down to bestsellers, and landed on the bestseller collection page. And so I have all of this whole sheet of just kind of observations with intention. And then at the end, I gather all of the navigation bits, and I see, oh, okay, it looks like, it seems like everyone is missing the bestseller section and they're actually going to the search bar. Or it seems like, no one really understands the return policy, and it's important to the user that they know it before they purchase it. So that's kind of how we pinpoint that. We mark down the time of the recording where this issue happened, so the RO can go back and observe that, as well as our Lucky Orange team. So once we get all of those, once we get all of the data from our report, our Lucky Orange team will then go find 5 or more sessions of users that have had that same experience. And we feel if you can find at least 5 of the same experience, it's creating a huge issue or a significant issue. And that's where we will start the process of, all right, when you have a clarity issue of our return policy, this is what we're going to do to change it. The RO connects with our store. We agree or we discuss implementation of that issue, and then we implement it, and then the beautiful process starts all over again. Is clarity for returns an issue? Has it been checked? Has it been fixed? And that, I just, from my experience, how awesome it feels when you're running a Lucky Orange poll on your site and you just see the same thing over and over again. Trust. I don't know, the site seems off, or I wasn't sure if I could purchase this because I wanted to know what it was like. These like anxieties before buying, and we're changing the copy, we're changing the content, we're changing all these things. And then we run this series of user tests. We pick up on what's going on. We make the test. We run a Lucky Orange poll again, and all of a sudden, trust is not an issue anymore. And we see what other things that are there that are underneath the trust issue that we can then improve again. So it's such a it's such a relief to see the reality of your site, having that control and changing it. To me, that in itself is just, I think that's the beauty of user tests, is that, it's one of the best ways to just identify what's going on and truly understand it as best as you can through users testing your site and then making that change and then seeing that change work. It's like a game. Like, it just won championships. You're like, oh, I finally did it. Okay, what else can I test? And that's the thing. Like, user testing is something that you just constantly get to do. It's an awesome tool. It complements other testing tools, and you can never do too many of them. And it should be in your, in a habit to test. I would say every 10 weeks or so, if that's how quickly you're making changes on your site. If you don't want to test user testing and then not do anything to your site and then test again, now that's going to be redundant. But constantly staying on top of your site and making those changes is you'll see a lot of beauty from that.
And what she's talking about, guys, is literally one of the big secrets that helps stores scale, is especially right now with this crazy ad environment and iOS 14 and all this junk going on with targeting and people opting out of being able to advertise. And pretty soon you won't even be able to track if they opened your emails, like all this stuff coming out. So that's making all your advertising more expensive. It's making it harder for you to get what you need. So the only thing you have full control over, is the buyer's journey and the buyer's experience once they land on your site. And that's where you're going to be able to make your ads work. If your ads, you're not gonna be able to keep optimizing on the platform side. You're gonna have to optimize what happens after they click. And that's what we've been doing for years. And it's, what we specialize in, but it's even more important than it ever has been before, because it's the one thing you can actually control in your advertising process. And user testing is probably one of the lowest hanging fruits that you can jump on when it comes to optimizing your store and getting your ads to perform better and your customers to just actually buy, which is what we all want, right?
It's how low traffic stores can stay in the game and get in the game, and it's how high traffic stores can increase their performance. It's absolutely a test for everyone.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, guys, we covered a lot today. I hope you enjoyed the user testing stuff. Dive into it. If you've done user testing, you have questions about user testing, whatever, throw a comment below the video or leave us a review or send us an email or whatever. Remember, we're doing these episodes for you guys. Like, if you have ideas or questions or whatever, let us know. Hit us up. Go to buildgrowscale.com. Type us an email, whatever you want to do, however you want to get in touch with us, comment on our YouTube videos, however. But again, we want to hear from you so we can continue to deliver information that will help you guys grow your stores. And with that, make sure you go to buildgrowscale.com/podcast to get the show notes and links to all the platforms so you can make sure you're subscribed, because we do a new episode every single week and you're not going to want to miss it. With that, guys, we will see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining us. See ya.